girl. Welcome to the Feminine Founder Podcast, where we are all about learning and growing professionally so that we can build a life that we are proud of and really love. My name is Caroline, and I'm a LinkedIn expert, obsessed with teaching female entrepreneurs how to start, grow, and scale their personal brand and business on LinkedIn. This podcast is all about sharing our stories and learning from each other on how to navigate our professional journey so that we can live our best lives. So if you are just starting your entrepreneurial journey, or if you are growing and scaling an epic company, you are in the right place, friend. Today, I have Courtney Schulnick with me. Courtney is a former litigator turned mindfulness coach. Welcome, Courtney.
It's so nice to be here. Thanks for having me.
So I'd love to hear your story. You're a former lawyer turned entrepreneur and mindfulness expert. Let me hear all the things. How did you get here?
Yeah, that's a great question. I sometimes ask myself that. How did I get here, with 3 kids, a husband, and juggling God knows what at any given moment? But in terms of my mindfulness journey, I will say that it was trying to find a sense of balance in the work that I was doing. At the time, I was working as a litigator. I worked for close to 2 decades as a litigator. And during that time, just before becoming a litigator, I got married, but then during my career as a litigator, we had 3 children. And as my plate, so to speak, became fuller, both in terms of my professional responsibilities and my role as a mom, a wife, and all the other hats that I wear, I found myself really feeling stressed out a lot of times and not knowing how to skillfully manage the stress and anxiety that I was experiencing. So at the suggestion of a therapist who I had been treating with to find tools and ways to find more ease and to connect more fully with the present, as opposed to worrying about what's to come or beating myself up for something from the past, I enrolled in what's known as the Mindfulness-Based Stress Reduction Program. So I'll just step back a moment or so and explain for anyone who's new to mindfulness. Mindfulness is our innate ability to be aware in the present moment. But oftentimes, whether we're a professional or not, or just sort of living in the world as we know it today, in all the busyness and the fast pace of life, we're often not present. We're often checked out or disconnected from what it is that's here. So with mindfulness, we can notice that and we can find ways to come back, to return again to this moment, to notice how we're experiencing the present. So the MBSR program, the Mindfulness-Based Stress Reduction Program, is basically an 8-week program that helps you to understand yourself more, to sort of notice how we can get in our own way at times. And then you learn formal and informal mindfulness practices that can help you to find ease and to connect more fully with the present.
So what are your top suggestions? I mean, we all live in a busy world. Everyone has family obligations, work obligations. Even last night, I found myself, picked up my phone at 7 p.m. and I was like, oh, I'm just going to do a quick little scroll. Doom scroll 36 minutes later.
Yep.
So how do you practice mindfulness or keep those things in mind when we've got all these distractions?
Yeah. And distraction, we say, just going back to I don't know if you were scrolling on your phone or if you were on a laptop, but we have so many, what we call devices of mass distraction. We get pulled away by just that, looking at our phone, checking an email, saying, I'm just going to respond to one more email. I'm just going to check out this person's profile on LinkedIn or see what this person posted on Instagram. And the next thing we know, it's an hour, 2 hours later. So the key is to notice in those moments when we're not present for ourselves or for others, and not to judge ourselves. Because in large part, it's the way we're conditioned in the society to keep doing, to not give ourselves moments to disconnect and to just be. So in a sense, it goes against the grain. But the more we can notice just how often we're not present, we're not aware, the more and more we can choose to come back. The more we could say, okay, I don't necessarily have to go to my phone in this moment. Like I can take some time to relax, to rest. So it's finding ways to not only weave in formal practice, but informally in our lives, in our daily routines. How can I support myself to be here in this moment?
So, who exactly is mindfulness for? If anyone's listening to this podcast and they're like, okay, I've heard about it, but I'm not doing it, or they're curious learning more. I mean, should everyone be practicing it? Should just high achievers be practicing it? I mean, what's your opinion on that?
I mean, in an ideal world, if everybody was more mindful of what it is they were feeling or doing, I think the world could be a much kinder, less reactive place. But I will say that the formal practice of mindfulness isn't for everyone. Some people find mindfulness in painting. Like they feel like when they're drawing or painting, they're really connected with the present moment, or maybe playing an instrument. They're really in the moment, so to speak. So there's different ways in which we can weave mindfulness or incorporate it into our lives. But I would say that more often than not, yes, mindfulness is innate, and when we connect more fully with it, it can really make the moments of our lives and collectively as a world that much sweeter.
So, when I'm thinking about mindfulness, I'm thinking about being present in the moment, I think about too grounding and breath work and all of those things. So, what types of exercises, or let's say formal, and let's say maybe it's only for 2 minutes a day,
Yeah.
but what can someone be doing to start practicing more mindfulness in their day?
Sure. So just in terms of breath, mindfulness, I've heard this. I heard this the other day. Someone said mindfulness is more chill. It's like chiller than other practices because we don't have to control the breath. We don't have to breathe in a certain way. I know there's certain types of breath work practices where you have to breathe in for a certain amount of time, hold the breath, exit for a certain, or exhale for a certain amount of time. But with mindfulness, we're just allowing the breath to breathe itself. So if that means in the busyness of your day, maybe you're finding that you're in a traffic jam and you need to get somewhere. And I'm sure many people can relate to this, and they're noticing some anxiousness or agitation. In that moment, we can just simply direct attention to come into the body and notice where we feel the breath most easily. Maybe it's the sensation from the nostrils, or the expansion and contraction in the region of the chest or the belly. So just in those 2 minutes, you can just let attention rest on what does it actually feel like. Another practice, which it's not a mindfulness practice per se, but it's an informal way to use the breath to incline ourselves in the direction of relaxation. It's the relaxing sigh. So I'm sure many of your audience members have taken a relaxing sigh, and it's the body's natural way to find more balance. But we just simply breathe in through the nostrils and open the mouth to let out a gentle sigh. And scientific research shows that just 3 consecutive relaxing sighs can have a physiological effect so that we can move the body and the mind in the direction of more relaxation.
What about if you're having a bad day and you're like, I just don't have enough control over my mind and my body to be practicing these things? What do you suggest to that person?
So, control is an interesting word that comes up because people often say, I cannot practice mindfulness. I can't control my thoughts. I can't control my mind. It's out of control. And with mindfulness, it's not so much about it's not about having to get rid of our thoughts. In fact, it's about just simply noticing sort of the landscape of the mind and allowing what's here. Like it's just like this. Like we just acknowledge it and not have to buy in to the things we tell ourselves. So it's not so much about control, but when we can allow our experience, whether it's our bodies are feeling unsettled or our minds are restless, when we can allow our experience to be as it is, as opposed to fighting it or striving to be some other way, just that allowing, that letting be is what can invite some more ease into our lives.
I love that, because once you start to develop those self-awareness skills, you start to notice like your heart's beating faster.
Yeah.
You're starting to get a little heated in your tone.
Yeah. And when you're not, when you give yourself a hard time for that, like as someone who's grappled with anxiety, when you notice that coming over you, when you notice the rapid heartbeat, when you notice the muscles are tense or you're feeling warmth in the body, when you give yourself a hard time for that and you're thinking, I should have this under control, or I should not be feeling this, it works in the other direction. It actually stirs up more agitation. So the more and more we can be aware of how we're relating to what it is we're thinking, what we're feeling, sort of what we're experiencing in the present moment, that's what gives us choice. That's what gives us a choice in how to be with it.
And the work that you do with companies, specifically with your employees, what has been your most impactful exercise that helps out companies that have, let's say, culture issues, or let's say they understand that their employees have an opportunity for personal and professional growth?
Yeah. So, sorry, I didn't know if you froze for a second to make sure I didn't cut you off.
What works best in those scenarios?
So there are a multitude of different formal practices and informal practices that I teach. What is so profound and what really helps these teachings to grow and to flourish is that you're learning a different skill set, so to speak, in community with your colleagues. And not only do you learn from me in being the mindfulness teacher or the mindfulness expert, you learn and grow from each other. So people having an opportunity to process what's coming up for them, whether it's in the professional sector or in their personal lives, sort of what they're experiencing with mindfulness practice, the sharing and the discussion that takes place really takes team building practice or experience to a whole nother level. So it's really empowering, but it's also a beautiful way to cultivate a deeper sense of connection with colleagues and teams.
Why don't we learn about mindfulness in our education system?
I ask myself that all the time. I believe that there's no such thing as being too young. I mean, we're instinctively, we're mindful beings, but as we get older, it sort of gets pushed to the wayside because of all the doing and the demands and our endless to-do list. But I believe that mindfulness, when it's the earlier it started, the more easily we can turn to these inner resources that are here. We just have to kind of polish them a bit as we get older. So the earlier, the better, in my opinion.
So what's your top advice for someone who is like listening to this podcast episode and like, okay, I'm interested, I'm ready to start, but has no clue where to start?
Yeah. So people can work together with me if they're curious about what mindfulness is. I offer a free 30-minute remote meeting so that people can ask questions about what mindfulness is. I mean, we talked about it a bit, but they can dive in a bit more deeply. They can get a taste of the practice where I can guide them through a brief practice, and then they can find out if they have any specific challenges. They can find out ways in which mindfulness can support them. So that's one way. There are, if you go, well, you can go onto my website, Courtney Schulnick Mindfulness, and I have a host of free resources. So you can practice, you can learn more that way. But nowadays, what's so amazing is if you just type in mindfulness meditation, there will be so much that you can find out. The key is to just make sure that, there's a lot of people putting themselves out there as mindfulness experts or mindfulness teachers. And so it's important to make sure that what you're reading or what you're practicing is legit. So yeah, there's a lot of research. There are a lot of resources out there.
Do you have a favorite mindfulness book?
Yes, I love Everywhere You Go, There You Are, and it's by Jon Kabat-Zinn. He is the pioneer of what's known as the mindfulness-based stress reduction program, and it's a really easy way to learn more about mindfulness and if I know we're all really busy, we're strapped for time, and chances are you may push it off to another day, but it's one of these books where the chapters are so tiny. So if you just keep it on your nightstand and maybe before getting up in the morning to go do all it is you have to do, even if you just take 5 minutes to read one chapter, you're going to learn a bit, and it may just be the thing that changes your day so that you're not falling into autopilot, that you're a bit more conscious about what it is you're saying, what it is you're doing, what it is you're feeling.
I feel like once you learn self-awareness and how to practice mindfulness, you can really reclaim your life.
That is exactly why I'm in the position I'm in. I really felt at several points, but one point in particular before I learned mindfulness, that I hit a wall and that I was sort of trapped in the work that I was doing. And how do I juggle this in with being a mom and a wife? And a few weeks into learning what mindfulness is and different ways to practice, I felt like I had been liberated, that like I could still have all the stressors that were very much present in my life, but I could find a more wholesome and supportive way to relate to them. So in many ways, I think it is about finding how do we work with what is, and when what's here is really challenging, like we don't have to feel imprisoned by it. We can find ways to free ourselves.
For those of you listening, rewind this 30 seconds because she's dropping the gold on how it can change your life. So tell me, what's lighting you up with some of the clients you're working with right now?
Oh my goodness, what's lighting me up? So many things. So I have a individual who I've been working with who has really been struggling with stress and anxiety, so much so that it's affected him with his ability to sleep. And he said that in the few weeks that he began, since he's begun working together with me, he has gotten some of the best night's sleep that he's ever gotten. And he's finding ways to better manage the stress and anxiety that comes in large part from the work that he handles. So that's an example of a one-on-one experience that I've found to be really fulfilling in being able to help someone. But I've worked with large companies where they're grappling with uncertainty. Like there's a change in the CEO of the company, and some people don't know if it means they're going to have a job tomorrow, or some people are taking on more and more so that what used to be like a certain title, they're like wearing many hats. So teaching teams, teaching companies how to not only support themselves, but how to support one another and how to actually become more resilient collectively as a company.
I love that. So how can our listeners find you?
So listeners can find me like you. I'm really active on LinkedIn. I post a lot about upcoming offerings that I'm leading or co-facilitating with others. I work at the Center for Mindfulness at Jefferson in Philadelphia, in addition to having my own mindfulness business. So I often promote upcoming workshops and whatnot on LinkedIn. You can also find me on my website, Courtney Schulnick Mindfulness. And I'm really excited. In about 2 weeks, I'll have a new rebranded website, so you can check that out to get even more resources.
Thank you, Courtney.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. I really enjoyed our time together, and I look forward to seeing more of your posts on LinkedIn and hope that everybody enjoyed this time together.